The bridge of the USS Thunderhawk hummed with quiet energy as Commander Jake Morrison stood at his station, watching the stars shift past the view screen. This was humanity's first real warship capable of traveling faster than light, and every member of the crew knew they were making history. The ship had been in space for 3 months now, pushing deeper into unknown territory than any human had ever gone before. Captain Lisa Chang sat in the command chair, her eyes fixed on the navigation display. She had spent 20 years in Earth's Navy, working her way up from a junior officer to commanding the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built. The Thunderhawk was massive, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons that represented the best of human engineering. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Ben Harris from the weapons station. His voice was steady, but there was an edge of excitement in it. Multiple contacts moving in formation. "They're big, ma'am." Lisa leaned forward in her chair. "How big?" "Bigger than us. At least 20 vessels, maybe more. They're holding position about 5 million kilometers ahead." Ben's fingers danced across his console, pulling up more data. "They're not trying to hide. In fact, I think they want us to see them." Jake moved to stand beside the captain's chair. "First contact protocols?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Send out the standard greeting on all frequencies. Let them know we come in peace but are prepared to defend ourselves if necessary." The message was sent, and for several long minutes there was nothing but silence. The crew waited, tension building in the air like static electricity before a storm. Then the view screen flickered and an image appeared. The alien that looked back at them was unlike anything they had imagined. It stood upright like a human, but its body was covered in a hard, chitinous shell that gleamed like polished metal. Multiple eyes dotted its angular head, and its mouth was a complex arrangement of mandibles that clicked together when it spoke. The translation software took a moment to process, then words filled the air. "I am Velkath, representative of the Galactic Council. You are the humans, yes? We have been monitoring your crude attempts at faster-than-light travel." "How quaint." The alien's tone dripped with condescension. Lisa kept her face neutral. "I am Captain Lisa Chang of Earth. We are pleased to make contact with other intelligent species. We hope this can be the beginning of a productive relationship between our peoples." Velkath made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Productive? Oh, how delightful. You primitives always think you have something to offer. Let me explain how the galaxy works, little human. The Council maintains order among the stars. Young species like yours pay tribute for the privilege of our protection. In return, we allow you to exist." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but Lisa raised a hand slightly, signaling him to stay calm. "Protection from what?" she asked. "From those who would take advantage of your weakness, of course. The galaxy is not a safe place for species who cannot defend themselves. Your vessel is amusing, I suppose, but it would not last 10 minutes against a real warship. Your weapons are outdated, your armor is laughable, and your tactics are those of savages who have never faced a true military power." Lieutenant Ben Harris pulled up tactical data on his screen, analyzing the alien ships that surrounded them. He didn't like what he saw. The vessels were enormous, each one dwarfing the Thunderhawk. Their hulls glowed with what appeared to be energy shields, and he could detect weapon systems that operated on principles he didn't fully understand. "What exactly does this tribute entail?" Lisa asked carefully. "Resources, primarily. Rare metals, processed materials, labor. Nothing you cannot afford, assuming you wish to continue existing as a species. Many civilizations have found our terms to be quite reasonable. Those who did not..." Velkath let the threat hang in the air. Lisa took a deep breath. She had been authorized by Earth's government to negotiate, but something about this felt wrong. Humanity had fought too hard, survived too much to simply hand over their freedom to the first aliens they met. "We will need time to discuss these terms with our leadership." "Time?" Velkath's mandibles clicked in what might have been annoyance. "Very well. You have one of your Earth months to comply. After that, the Krillian Empire will come to collect what is owed. I suggest you do not test their patience. They enforce the Council's will, and they have been doing so for over 2,000 years. No species has successfully resisted them in living memory." The transmission ended abruptly, and the alien fleet began to move away, leaving the Thunderhawk alone in the void. For a moment, nobody on the bridge spoke. Then Jake turned to Lisa. "Captain, we need to get this information back to Earth immediately." "Agreed. Helm, plot a course home. Maximum speed. Lisa stood from her chair and walked to the view screen, staring out at the stars. What did you find in their tactical data, Ben? The weapons officer brought his analysis to the main screen. Their shields appear to be designed to deflect energy weapons. That's the standard throughout the galaxy, from what I could gather from their sensor emissions. Lasers, plasma weapons, particle beams. All the things we experimented with and mostly abandoned. Why did we abandon them? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Because kinetic weapons are more reliable and pack more punch for less energy. Railguns, missiles, good old-fashioned bullets traveling fast enough to punch through anything. Ben looked up from his console. Captain, I don't think they've ever faced weapons like ours. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. The galaxy has been at peace for 2,000 years. Not because they learned to get along, but because one empire became so powerful that nobody dared challenge them. They've forgotten what real war looks like. And we never stopped preparing for it, Jake added grimly. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. When they arrived, the Thunderhawk transmitted everything they had learned to military command and the civilian government. Within hours, President Andrew Cole called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Jake and Lisa were present via video link as the president addressed the gathered representatives. The question before us is simple, Andrew said, his voice firm. Do we submit to this Galactic Council and pay tribute for the right to exist in our own space? Or do we stand firm and face whatever consequences come? The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that humanity should be cautious, that they didn't know enough about the galaxy to make enemies. Others insisted that paying tribute was just another word for slavery, and that Earth had not survived countless wars and near extinctions just to bow to alien masters. Finally, Andrew Cole made his decision. He recorded a message to be broadcast to the Galactic Council, to the Krillian Empire, and to any species in the galaxy who was listening. I am President Andrew Cole of Earth. I speak for all of humanity when I say this. We will not pay tribute. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not kneel to anyone. Earth has earned its place in this universe through blood, sweat, and the determination to survive against all odds. If the Krillian Empire wants to test us, they are welcome to try. But they should know this. Humanity does not back down from a fight. We never have and we never will. The message was sent and the die was cast. Somewhere in the depths of space, the Krillian Empire received Earth's defiance, and they began to prepare for war. 3 weeks after President Cole's message echoed across the galaxy, Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected a massive fleet entering human territory. The Krillian Empire had sent their answer, and it was written in ships of war. War Marshal Thextor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Retribution, and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His fleet consisted of 40 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering perfected over millennia. Behind him, his officers worked quietly at their stations, confident in their superiority. They had crushed 17 rebellions without losing a single battle. This would be no different. Scan the human territory, Thextor ordered. His voice was deep and resonant, carrying the weight of absolute authority. I want to know every ship they have, every weapon, every defense. These primitives need to understand the cost of defiance. His sensor officer, a young Krillian named Zethal, worked quickly. Sir, we're detecting only minimal military presence. A few patrol craft, some orbital defense platforms around their homeworld, and one large vessel, the same one that met Representative Velkath. They call it the USS Thunderhawk. One ship? Thextor's mandibles clicked in amusement. They dare to defy the Council with one ship? Prepare a broadcast. I will personally deliver the terms of their surrender. On Earth, Captain Lisa Chang received the alert in the middle of the night. She was at the Thunderhawk's docking bay within 20 minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket as she ran. The ship had been undergoing repairs and upgrades since returning from the first contact mission, but it was ready to fly. It had to be. Commander Jake Morrison met her at the bridge entrance. His face was grim. 40 ships, Captain. They're holding position at the edge of the solar system, right past Neptune's orbit. They've been broadcasting for the last hour. Let me hear it, Lisa said, settling into her command chair. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Krillian officer in ornate armor. War Marshal Thextor looked every inch the conqueror, his multiple eyes gleaming with contempt. Humans of Earth, I am War Marshal Thextor of the Krillian Empire. You have broken council law by refusing to pay tribute. You have developed weapons without authorization. You have expanded your military in violation of protocols established for young species. For these crimes, you will face judgment." Jake muttered something under his breath that Lisa pretended not to hear. She kept her eyes fixed on the screen. "However, the council is merciful," Thextor continued. "Surrender now, and we will only take half your resources and population as tribute. Resist, and we will reduce your homeworld to ash and scatter your species across the galaxy as slaves. You have 12 hours to respond." The transmission ended, and silence filled the bridge. Lieutenant Ben Harris broke it first. "Captain, I'm running combat simulations. 1 ship against 40. The computer says we have a 0% chance of victory." "Then we change the conditions of the fight," Lisa said calmly. She opened a channel to Earth's military command. "This is Captain Chang requesting immediate connection to President Cole." The president appeared on screen within minutes. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and focused. "Captain, I've seen the Krillian broadcast. What are our options?" "Limited, sir. We're outnumbered and outgunned by conventional measures. But I've been reviewing Lieutenant Harris's analysis of their technology. Their shields are designed for energy weapons. Our kinetic armaments might be more effective than they expect." Andrew Cole leaned back in his chair, considering. Around him, military advisors and government officials argued in hushed voices. Finally, he leaned forward again. "Captain Chang, I'm not going to order you to fight a battle you can't win. If you think we should negotiate, say so now." Lisa looked around her bridge. Jake stood at his station, steady and ready. Ben Harris was already running weapons checks, preparing for what might come. Engineer Corporal Amy Foster had emerged from the engine room, grease on her hands and determination in her eyes. These were her people, her crew, her responsibility. "Sir, humanity didn't get where we are by backing down when things looked impossible. We fought through world wars, survived nuclear standoffs, and clawed our way to the stars. If we surrender now, we're not just giving up our freedom. We're giving up who we are." President Cole smiled slightly. "I was hoping you'd say that. The Thunderhawk is authorized to engage as you see fit. Earth stands with you, Captain." The next 10 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Amy Foster pushed the reactor to maximum capacity, then found ways to push it even further. Ben Harris loaded every weapon system with ammunition, organizing firing solutions for targets they might never get to shoot. Jake coordinated with Earth's orbital defense platforms, setting up communication protocols and backup plans. Lisa spent the time reviewing everything humanity knew about warfare: ancient battles, modern conflicts, space combat theories that had never been tested in real conditions. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They knew how to hurt things that didn't want to be hurt. When the 12-hour deadline arrived, the Thunderhawk undocked from Earth's orbital station and began moving toward the Krillian fleet. On the bridge, the crew took their positions. Nobody spoke. There was nothing left to say. War Marshal Thextor watched the human ship approach on his view screen. It was moving slowly, almost cautiously. Good. They understood their situation. "Open a channel. Let me hear their surrender." But the message that came through was not what he expected. Captain Lisa Chang appeared on his screen, standing straight and tall, her uniform crisp and her expression calm. "War Marshal Thextor, this is Captain Chang of the USS Thunderhawk. I have a message from Earth. Your surrender terms?" Thextor asked, almost bored. "No. Earth's response to your ultimatum." Lisa's eyes hardened. "We refuse. Earth kneels to no one." Thextor felt a flash of anger. "You fool. Do you not understand what you're facing? My fleet will destroy you. Then you'll have to catch us first." Lisa made a gesture off-screen, and the Thunderhawk suddenly accelerated, its engines burning at full power as it angled away from the Krillian formation. "All ships, pursue and destroy," Thextor ordered. The Divine Retribution and its escort vessels broke formation, chasing after the human ship. This was a waste of time, but Thextor would make sure every species in the galaxy heard about what happened to those who defied the Council. The Krillian fleet spread out, trying to surround the Thunderhawk and cut off its escape routes. The human ship dodged and weaved, its smaller size making it more maneuverable than the larger Krillian vessels. For a moment, Thextor wondered if they were simply trying to run away. Then the Thunderhawk stopped, turning to face the pursuing fleet. On its bridge, Captain Chang gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. All weapons fire at will. The space between the ships erupted in violence. Railgun slugs, each one traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, slammed into the lead Krillian vessels. The energy shields that had protected them for centuries were designed to deflect and absorb directed energy. They did nothing against solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. The first Krillian ship died in seconds, its hull punctured in a dozen places before it even registered the attack. The second vessel tried to maneuver, but a spread of missiles overwhelmed its point defense systems. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness of space. On the divine retribution, Thextor stared in shock at his tactical display. 2 ships gone in less than a minute. How is this possible? Return fire. All vessels concentrate on that ship. But the Krillian weapons, powerful as they were, couldn't seem to land a solid hit. The Thunderhawk moved like nothing Thextor had ever seen, anticipating targeting solutions and sliding away from danger with precision that seemed almost impossible. And all the while, it kept firing. 3 more Krillian ships exploded. Then 4, then 5. The humans weren't just fighting, they were hunting. Lieutenant Ben Harris worked his weapons console like a musician playing an instrument, each shot carefully calculated and timed. Jake Morrison called out target priorities and coordinated point defense, swatting down incoming fire with precision. Amy Foster kept the engines running beyond their rated capacity, coaxing every ounce of performance from systems pushed to their absolute limits. And Captain Lisa Chang directed it all, her mind racing through tactical possibilities, drawing on thousands of years of human military experience. The Krillians fought like they had already won. Humans fought like they had everything to lose. When the battle finally ended, 12 Krillian ships were destroyed and 8 more were damaged and retreating. The divine retribution itself bore scars along its hull where railgun fire had penetrated its shields. War Marshal Thextor, for the first time in his long military career, gave the order to withdraw. The Thunderhawk held its position, surrounded by the wreckage of ships that had thought themselves invincible. On Earth, billions of humans watched the battle feeds and realized something profound. They were not alone in the universe, but they were strong enough to stand on their own. And across the galaxy, species that had lived under the Council's rule for millennia heard about the Battle of Proxima Station and began to wonder if the age of Krillian dominance might finally be coming to an end. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The Galactic Council tried to suppress the story, claiming it was propaganda or that the reports were exaggerated. But too many species had monitored the battle, and too many Krillian survivors had returned home with tales of a human warship that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. In the council chambers on the capital world of Nexus Prime, Representative Velkath stood before the assembled delegates and tried to maintain order. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted questions, demanded explanations, and whispered among themselves about what this meant for the established order. The Krillian defeat was a fluke, Velkath insisted, his mandibles clicking with agitation. One lucky battle does not make these humans a threat to council authority. War Marshal Thextor was simply unprepared for their primitive tactics. A delegate from the Cerelian Coalition, a species that had paid tribute for over 800 years, stood up. Her voice was quiet, but carried across the chamber. If the mighty Krillian Empire can be defeated by primitive tactics, perhaps they are not as mighty as we believed. Perhaps none of you are. The chamber erupted again. Velkath tried to restore order, but the damage was done. For the first time in 2,000 years, the member species of the Galactic Council were questioning whether submission was really their only option. On Earth, President Andrew Cole addressed a joint session of government and military leadership. The room was packed with generals, admirals, scientists, and politicians, all trying to process what had happened. Captain Lisa Chang and Commander Jake Morrison stood at the front, still in their uniforms from the battle. "We won one fight," Andrew said firmly. "One. The Krillian Empire has hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. They will come back, and they will come back angry. We need to be ready." Admiral Frank Peterson, the head of Earth's naval forces, stepped forward. "Sir, we're already mobilizing every shipyard on Earth and in the colonies. Based on the Thunderhawk's design, we can produce 12 more battleships in the next 6 weeks. Smaller vessels even faster." "Will it be enough?" Andrew asked. Lisa spoke up. "Sir, it's not just about numbers. The Krillians have been unchallenged for so long that they've forgotten how to really fight. They rely on superior technology and overwhelming force. We can't match their technology, but we can match their force if we move fast enough. And we can outthink them, Jake added. The galaxy operates under rules that nobody questions. Energy shields, energy weapons, formation tactics that haven't changed in centuries. They're fighting the last war over and over again. We're fighting the next one. Andrew nodded slowly. Then we go to full war production. Every resource, every factory, every capable person. Earth is now on a war footing. He paused, looking at Lisa. Captain, I'm promoting you to Admiral. You'll command our fleet when it's ready. How long before the Thunderhawk can fight again? Give us 3 days for repairs and resupply, sir. We'll be ready. Those 3 days turned into a frenzy of activity. Amy Foster and her engineering team worked around the clock, repairing battle damage and implementing new modifications based on what they learned from the fight. Ben Harris collaborated with weapons designers to create new munitions specifically designed to counter Krillian technology. Jake organized training programs for the crews of the new ships being built, compressing months of instruction into intensive crash courses. And Lisa planned. She studied every piece of intelligence they had on Krillian military operations, looking for patterns and weaknesses. She reviewed historical battles from Earth's past, from ancient naval warfare to modern space combat simulations. Humanity's entire history was a history of conflict, and she intended to use every lesson learned. On the 4th day, the Krillian Empire sent their response. Not a fleet this time, but a message broadcast across all frequencies, meant for every species in the galaxy to hear. Supreme Commander Zalruth appeared on screens across human space. She was larger than War Marshal Thextor, her armor more ornate, her bearing radiating absolute authority. Humans of Earth, I am Supreme Commander Zalruth, leader of all Krillian military forces. You have embarrassed one of our war marshals and destroyed valuable ships. For this you will pay a price beyond your imagination. I am assembling the Grand Armada, 300 warships that represent the full might of the Krillian Empire. We will not simply destroy your military. We will reduce your cities to rubble, take your people as slaves, and erase your civilization from the stars. You have 30 days to prepare. Spend them well, for they are the last days your species will know as a free people. The transmission ended. On Earth, in the Thunderhawk's ready room, Admiral Lisa Chang gathered her senior officers. Jake Morrison was there, along with Ben Harris, Amy Foster, and several new faces, captains who would command the other battleships currently being rushed through construction. 30 days, Lisa said, looking around the table. They're giving us time to be afraid. Time to second-guess ourselves. Time to consider surrendering. Are we considering it? Asked Captain Danny Brooks, who would command the new battleship USS Defiant once it was complete. No, Lisa said flatly. We're using the time to prepare, but we're not waiting for them to come to us. We're taking the fight to them. Jake leaned forward. Admiral, you're talking about offensive operations into Krillian space. That's a bold move. Bold is what they won't expect, Lisa replied. She pulled up a star map showing Krillian territory. They think we're a defensive species, that we'll fortify Earth and wait for them to attack. Instead, we hit their supply lines, their forward bases, their support infrastructure. We make them react to us instead of executing their plan. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth's military machine shifted into high gear. 12 new battleships rolled out of the shipyards, each one incorporating improvements based on the Thunderhawk's combat experience. Dozens of smaller destroyers and frigates joined them, along with support vessels designed to keep the fleet supplied and operational far from home. The new fleet conducted shakedown cruises that doubled as training exercises. Crews learned to work together, practicing the aggressive, coordinated tactics that had won the first battle. Ben Harris taught weapons officers how to think like hunters rather than gunners. Amy Foster showed engineering teams how to squeeze extra performance from every system. Jake Morrison drilled them on damage control and survival techniques. And then, before the 30-day deadline expired, Admiral Chang gave the order. The human fleet left Earth not to defend, but to attack. Their first target was a Krillian supply depot, in a system called Theta 7. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended, used primarily to stockpile ammunition and fuel for ships heading to the front lines. The humans hit it with overwhelming force, destroying the depot and its 6 escort ships before they could send out a distress signal. The second target was a forward listening post. The third was a repair facility. Each strike was quick, brutal, and calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum risk. The humans didn't try to hold territory or engage in prolonged battles. They struck, destroyed their targets, and vanished back into deep space before reinforcements could arrive. On Krylos Prime, the Krillian homeworld, Supreme Commander Zal Ruth watched reports of the attacks with growing fury. These humans were not behaving like a species facing extermination. They were behaving like raiders, like pirates, like predators. It was disgraceful. It was dishonorable. It was effective. "Recall the Grand Armada," she ordered. "Deploy half the fleet to defend our supply lines and installations. The humans are trying to weaken us before the final confrontation. We will not allow it." But dividing the fleet was exactly what Lisa had hoped for. Every ship assigned to defensive duties was one less ship that could attack Earth. Every resource spent protecting supply lines was a resource not used for the invasion. And every day the Krillians spent reacting to human attacks was a day Earth used to build more ships and train more crews. The war of movement continued for another 3 weeks. Human forces struck at targets across Krillian space, always staying mobile, never presenting a fixed target. They used tactics that the galaxy had never seen, drawing on Earth's military history for inspiration. Submarine warfare from the 20th century, cavalry raids from ancient times, carrier strike groups from the age of naval aviation. Every battle humanity had ever fought provided lessons for this new kind of war. Lieutenant Commander Megan Price, captain of the destroyer USS Swift, led a daring raid on a Krillian communications hub, disrupting their ability to coordinate fleet movements. Captain Sam Turner of the USS Relentless pioneered new electronic warfare techniques using Earth's advanced computer systems to hack and disable Krillian vessels without firing a shot. Everywhere they went, humans proved that superior technology meant nothing against superior tactics and adaptability. The galaxy watched in amazement. Species that had never considered resisting the Council suddenly saw possibilities they had never imagined. Underground resistance movements formed on a dozen worlds. Tribute payments were delayed or sent incomplete. Some species began quietly building their own weapons, hiding them from Council inspectors. The Krillian Grand Armada was the largest military force assembled in over 1,000 years. 300 warships moved through space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. At the center of the formation, aboard the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory, Supreme Commander Zal Ruth watched her tactical displays with satisfaction. "The humans have ceased their raids," reported her tactical officer. "All of their ships have withdrawn to their home system. They are preparing for a defensive battle." Zal Ruth's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. As expected, they have realized that their tricks cannot save them from overwhelming force. When we arrive at their homeworld, they will have nowhere left to run. But Zal Ruth was wrong about human intentions. Admiral Lisa Chang had not recalled the fleet to defend. She had recalled them to attack. On Earth, President Andrew Cole stood in the command center deep beneath the planet's surface, surrounded by military advisors and government officials. On the main screen, Lisa appeared via video link from the Thunderhawk, now leading a fleet of 20 battleships and over 50 smaller vessels. "Mr. President, the fleet is ready to depart," Lisa said. "We've loaded every ship with maximum ammunition and supplies. Engineering teams have pushed our systems as far as they can go. We're as prepared as we're going to be." "Admiral, are you certain about this plan?" Andrew asked. "If you take the fleet away from Earth and the Krillians get past you, our homeworld will be defenseless. Sir, if we wait here for them to attack, we'll be fighting on their terms. 300 ships against our 50, with Earth in the crossfire. We need to choose the battlefield and we need to hit them before they expect it." Lisa paused. "We're not defending Earth by staying here. We're defending it by making sure the Krillian fleet never reaches it." Andrew looked around at his advisors. Some nodded agreement. Others looked worried. Finally, he turned back to the screen. "Then go with our blessing, Admiral. Bring our people home safe." The human fleet departed Earth orbit 6 hours later. They moved quickly, using the same hit-and-run tactics that had served them so well. But this time with a much larger force and a much bolder objective. They were going to intercept the Krillian armada before it reached human space. Commander Jake Morrison, now serving as Lisa's fleet tactical coordinator, pulled up star charts in the Thunderhawk's briefing room. Intelligence puts the Krillian fleet here, about 2 weeks out from Earth at their current speed. If we push our engines hard, we can reach this position, he indicated a point on the map, and force them to fight in the Kepler belt system. Lots of asteroids and debris. It'll limit their ability to use their numbers effectively. Captain Danny Brooks, commanding the USS Defiant, studied the map. We'd be fighting surrounded by rocks and ice. Dangerous for us, too. Less dangerous for us than for them, Lieutenant Ben Harris said. He was coordinating weapon systems for the entire fleet now. Krillian sensors are optimized for deep space. All that debris will make it harder for them to track us. And we're better at close-range fighting anyway. It's a solid plan, Lisa agreed. But we need to do more than just win the battle. We need to break them so completely that they'll think twice before threatening Earth again. Over the next 10 days, the human fleet pushed their engines to the limit, racing to reach the intercept point. During the journey, the crews trained constantly. They practiced coordination between ships, refined their targeting algorithms, and ran through every combat scenario they could imagine. Nurse Kelly Martinez, serving aboard the medical frigate Mercy, prepared her facilities for the casualties she knew were coming. She had seen the aftermath of the first battle, helped treat wounded sailors who had survived impossible odds. She knew this fight would be worse, much worse. Amy Foster worked miracles in the Thunderhawk's engineering section, finding ways to squeeze more power from the reactor, more speed from the engines, more efficiency from every system. Her team worked 18-hour shifts, fueled by coffee and determination, knowing that every percentage point of improvement might be the difference between survival and death. The Krillian armada had no idea the humans were coming for them. Supreme Commander Zal Ruth maintained her formation, confident in her superiority, already planning the victory celebration that would follow Earth's destruction. Her officers were relaxed, certain that this would be a simple matter of overwhelming a weaker foe. Then the sensors detected something ahead. Ships, human ships, not running away but coming straight at them. How many? Zal Ruth demanded. 70 vessels, Supreme Commander. They're accelerating toward us at high speed. Zal Ruth felt a flash of confusion. Were the humans insane? They were charging directly at a force 4 times their size. Defensive formation. Prepare to engage when they enter weapons range. But the humans didn't wait for weapons range. When they were still thousands of kilometers out, they opened fire with long-range missiles. Hundreds of them, each one programmed with sophisticated targeting AI that the Krillians had never encountered. The missiles wove through point defense fire, working together like a swarm of insects, overwhelming the Krillian ability to shoot them all down. The first wave of missiles struck home, and a dozen Krillian ships took damage. Before Zal Ruth could process what had happened, the human fleet split into smaller groups and dove into the asteroid field, using the cover to mask their approach. All ships, pursue and destroy, Zal Ruth ordered. They cannot hide forever. But hiding wasn't what the humans had in mind. As the Krillian formation entered the asteroid field, trying to maintain their careful order, the human ships struck from multiple directions at once. The USS Defiant emerged from behind a massive asteroid and raked a Krillian cruiser with railgun fire at point-blank range. The USS Swift led a squadron of destroyers on a high-speed attack run that crippled the engines of a Krillian dreadnought. The USS Relentless used electronic warfare to disable targeting systems across an entire section of the enemy fleet, and the Thunderhawk, with Admiral Chang directing the assault, hit the Krillians where it hurt most by taking out their command ships. Lisa had studied the Krillian fleet structure and identified which vessels were coordinating different sections of the armada. By destroying or disabling these ships, she could break the Krillians into smaller, less coordinated groups. Target the vessel at grid 734, Lisa ordered. That's their communications hub for the left flank. Kill it and that entire section of their fleet goes blind. Ben Harris coordinated fire from the Thunderhawk and 2 other battleships. Railgun rounds and missiles converged on the target from 3 directions simultaneously. The Krillian ship's shields held for maybe 3 seconds before collapsing under the combined assault. The vessel broke apart in a series of explosions. Immediately, the Krillian left flank began to lose cohesion. Ships that should have been supporting each other were now operating independently, each one trying to fight its own battle. Human forces exploited the chaos, concentrating fire on isolated targets and destroying them before help could arrive. Jake Morrison watched the tactical display and saw the pattern emerging. "Admiral, their center formation is trying to regroup. If they succeed, they could push through to Earth even if we win here." "Then we don't let them regroup," Lisa said. "All battleships form on the Thunderhawk. We're going straight through their center." What followed was the most brutal fighting of the war. The human battleships, led by the Thunderhawk, drove like a spear into the heart of the Krillian formation. The ships around them provided covering fire while the battleships used their heavy armor and weapons to punch through the enemy line. It was a tactic from ancient naval warfare, adapted for the age of space combat. Krillian ships fired everything they had at the attacking force. The Thunderhawk took hit after hit, its armor scarred and blackened, but it kept moving forward. Amy Foster performed miracles in engineering, rerouting power, shoring up failing systems, keeping the ship alive through sheer determination and expertise. Captain Sam Turner's USS Relentless took catastrophic damage protecting the Thunderhawk from a concentrated barrage. The ship was crippled, drifting, but Sam managed to launch one last attack that destroyed the Krillian vessel that had targeted him. Kelly Martinez and her medical teams worked frantically to save the Relentless survivors who were evacuated to the Mercy. The battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, the Krillian Grand Armada was no longer a cohesive fighting force. Over 100 ships had been destroyed or disabled. The rest were scattered across the asteroid field, many of them damaged and trying to retreat. The human fleet had lost 8 ships and another 12 were severely damaged, but they held the field. On the Eternal Victory, Supreme Commander Zalruth stared at her tactical display in disbelief. This was impossible. The Krillian Empire had not suffered a defeat like this in 2,000 years. Her carefully planned invasion was in ruins, and the humans were still coming. The Thunderhawk limped toward the Eternal Victory, its weapons still active despite the damage. Lisa opened a channel to the Krillian flagship. "Supreme Commander Zalruth, this is Admiral Chang. Your armada is broken. Withdraw now and we'll let you leave. Continue fighting and we'll destroy every ship you have." 6 months after the defeat of the Krillian Grand Armada, the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority was crumbling. 3 species had openly declared independence. 7 more had stopped paying tribute, and dozens of others were watching humanity closely, waiting to see what would happen next. Admiral Lisa Chang stood on the observation deck of the Thunderhawk, looking out at Earth. The ship had been fully repaired and upgraded, stronger than ever. Around it, dozens of other human vessels orbited the planet, part of a fleet that had grown rapidly as Earth's shipyards worked day and night. But Lisa wasn't thinking about military strength. She was thinking about what came next. "Admiral, we have an incoming transmission," Jake Morrison said, entering the observation deck. "It's from the Council. They're requesting a formal meeting to discuss terms." "Terms?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What kind of terms?" "They didn't say, but the message came from Velkath himself. He says it's urgent." Lisa followed Jake to the communications room. The view screen showed the insectoid alien who had first dismissed humanity as primitive. But Velkath looked different now. His mandibles clicked nervously and his multiple eyes darted around as if searching for threats. "Admiral Chang," he said, attempting to sound formal, "the Galactic Council wishes to extend an invitation to Earth to discuss your status within the galactic community. We believe we may have been too hasty in our initial assessment of your capabilities." "Too hasty?" Lisa kept her voice neutral. "You threatened to destroy our civilization and enslave our people. That seems like more than being hasty." Velkath's mandibles clicked faster. The Council was operating under certain assumptions about young species. Assumptions that, in your case, proved to be incorrect. We would like to offer Earth a seat on the Council as a full member with voting rights. Jake, standing just off camera, raised his eyebrows. Lisa considered the offer carefully. A Council seat would give humanity influence over galactic affairs. It would legitimize Earth's position and potentially protect them from future threats. But it would also mean accepting the Council's authority and playing by their rules. "I'll discuss your offer with President Cole," Lisa said finally. "But I need to be clear about something. Earth doesn't want to dominate the galaxy. We just want to be free to live our lives without threats or tribute demands. If the council can accept that, we can talk. The transmission ended and Jake let out a low whistle. They're scared. Actually scared. The council has ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years and now they're afraid of us. Not afraid enough, Lisa said. Not yet, she was right. 3 weeks later, intelligence reports revealed that the council was secretly supporting the Krillian Empire's efforts to rebuild their military. They were funding new ship construction, providing advanced weapons technology, and organizing other species to form a coalition against Earth. The offer of a council seat had been a delaying tactic. Nothing more. President Andrew Cole called an emergency meeting of Earth's military and civilian leadership. It seems the council learned nothing from their defeats. They still think they can control us through force. The question is, how do we respond? Admiral Lisa Chang spread a star map across the conference table. The council's real power comes from the Krillian homeworld of Krylos Prime. It's their industrial center, their military headquarters, their seat of government. As long as it remains untouched, they'll always believe they can rebuild and try again. You're suggesting an attack on their homeworld? Admiral Frank Peterson looked shocked. That's an act of total war. We're already at war, Jake Morrison said. He had been promoted to Commodore after the last battle, and now commanded a squadron of destroyers. They've just been too proud to admit it. The council will keep coming at us until we make the cost too high to bear. Or until we change the game entirely, Lisa said. She pointed to the star map. We don't attack Krylos Prime to destroy it. We attack it to prove a point. That nowhere is safe if the council continues their aggression. That Earth can and will defend itself anywhere in the galaxy. President Cole studied the map for a long moment. Finally, he looked up at Lisa. If we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will see us as either liberators or conquerors. Maybe both. Then we need to be very clear about our intentions, Lisa replied. We're not there to conquer or occupy. We're there to send a message and offer an alternative. The plan was ambitious and risky. Earth would send its entire fleet deep into Krillian space for a direct assault on Krylos Prime. But instead of simply attacking, they would broadcast a message to every species in the galaxy, explaining their actions and offering a new vision for galactic cooperation. It took 6 weeks to prepare. The human fleet grew to over 100 vessels as new ships completed construction. Crews trained for the deep space operation, practicing coordination and tactics until they could execute complex maneuvers in their sleep. Supply ships were loaded with everything the fleet would need for an extended campaign far from home. Captain Danny Brooks, now commanding a flotilla of battleships, met with Lisa in the Thunderhawk's briefing room. Admiral, some of the crew are nervous. This is a long way from home and we'll be surrounded by hostile territory. That's why we're bringing overwhelming force, Lisa said. The Krillians need to see that we can project power anywhere we choose. And other species need to see that Earth is willing to fight for a better galaxy, not just for ourselves. Amy Foster had pushed the Thunderhawk's engines to new levels of performance. The ship could now travel faster and farther than ever before, and the rest of the fleet had been upgraded to match. Lieutenant Ben Harris had developed new weapons specifically for this mission, including long-range missiles that could strike from outside normal engagement ranges. The fleet departed Earth orbit on a cold morning in November. Families gathered to watch their loved ones leave, knowing that this could be the most dangerous mission humanity had ever undertaken. But there was pride in those faces, too. Earth was no longer a species cowering in fear. They were taking control of their own destiny. The journey to Krylos Prime took 3 weeks. During that time, the human fleet passed through territory controlled by various council species. None of them tried to stop the humans. They simply watched, waiting to see what would happen. When the fleet arrived at Krylos Prime, they found it defended by what remained of the Krillian military. Supreme Commander Zal Ruth had positioned her forces in orbit around the homeworld, nearly 200 ships arranged in defensive formations. It was impressive, but it was also desperate. The Krillians were fighting to protect their home. Lisa opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the system and throughout the galaxy. People of Krylos Prime, this is Admiral Lisa Chang of Earth. We are not here to destroy your world or harm your people. We are here to end a cycle of domination and fear that has controlled the galaxy for too long. Zal Ruth's voice cut in. You dare come to our homeworld and speak of peace? You have destroyed our fleets, killed our people, and now you threaten our families. We will defend Krylos Prime with our last breath. I'm counting on it, Lisa said. Because I want the entire galaxy to see what happens when an empire fights to protect something they care about versus when they fight to oppress others. Your people will fight bravely today, but they will lose, not because they are weak, but because the cause they're fighting for is wrong. The battle that followed was fierce but relatively short. The Krillian defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing their homeworld lay behind them. But the human fleet had learned too much, grown too skilled. They used tactics the Krillians had never seen, weapons the Krillians couldn't defend against, and a level of coordination that came from a species that had been fighting itself for thousands of years. Jake Morrison led a squadron that disabled the Krillian orbital defense platforms without destroying them. Captain Danny Brooks and his battleships punched through the outer defensive line. The USS Relentless, rebuilt and upgraded, used electronic warfare to coordinate the entire fleet's movements with precision that seemed almost impossible. Nurse Kelly Martinez and her medical teams stood ready aboard the Mercy, but Lisa had given strict orders to minimize casualties on both sides. Human weapons targeted engines and weapons systems, not crew compartments. When Krillian ships were disabled, human rescue teams moved in to help evacuate survivors. After 4 hours of fighting, the Krillian defense collapsed. Supreme Commander Zell Ruth's flagship was crippled, drifting powerless in orbit. Human ships surrounded Krillos Prime, but they did not fire on the planet itself. Instead, Lisa broadcast another message. People of the galaxy, you have witnessed Earth's military capability. We could have destroyed Krillos Prime. We could have turned this world into a smoking ruin, but we chose not to. Because Earth does not fight to conquer or enslave. We fight for freedom. For ourselves and for any species that wants it. She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. The Galactic Council has maintained order through fear and force for 2,000 years. They tell you that tribute and submission are the price of peace. But that's not peace. That's just slow surrender. Earth proposes an alternative.